You're listening to If You Know You Grow the podcast. I'm your host, Chantel Braley, and I have over 15 years experience in marketing, e-commerce, and really all things creative. I'm so excited to take you behind the scenes of thriving businesses, hear from amazing industry experts, and chat a little bit about the mindset that it takes to really succeed in this industry. Please follow, like, and subscribe so that I can continue creating amazing content for you and sharing these incredible stories. Let's get into it. Okay, here we are. I've got myself situated and I've got my crispy little Coke that I need to actually open. Hold on. Hold, please. All right, everybody. So we're back for another week and I have my trusty little co-host here, Miss Zelda, along with me. It's actually her birthday this week. How exciting. She's going to be 11 years old. She's quite sprightly for an 11-year-old. Anyways, getting into all the things and hoping that my battery doesn't die. Do you know what's funny? For someone who, essentially makes money in technology, fuck, I can be so bad with technology sometimes. Well, getting into this week, I have just come back from my second ever Humble Brags Founders Retreat, and I thought it'd be good for me to recap that because I think last time I went and I chatted about it and said, oh, it was so great, but I think coming for a second time and having a slightly different format and different location, there's always things to share, and I am really big about the no gatekeeping and also just talking about my experience because so many people are like, oh, what was it like? What did you get out of it? So obviously there is some interest and I'd love to share. So I've made some notes to just kind of, I guess, run through the retreat, how I felt, and all of the things. To give you some context for those of you who don't know, Humble Brags and Shopping Bags is actually another podcast that was created by Carmel and Hannah, who are two great friends of mine. And at one point, that podcast ended up birthing this incredible retreat. And so there's been 3 retreats so far, one in Airlie Beach, one in Tasmania, and then now this most recent one in Townsville, which, for personal reasons, I really quite liked the Townsville location, but it was also beautiful. I went last month and I loved it. And then, we stayed at the Ardo Hotel. So knowing that I was going back was really exciting because I really think that it is such a stunning hotel and it's a really beautiful, town. I know that, I've had lots of opinions being like, why are you going to Townsville? It was beautiful. I get that I didn't leave the hotel for the most part, but if you just want to do a little staycation, sit in your bathing suit and look at a beautiful beach, or beautiful, I guess it's not really a beach, but coastline, then highly recommend. Anyways, this is the 3rd one so far, and I think each time it's been a different group of founders, it's been a different group of technology sponsors, and the concept is basically 3 days of wellness and education and bonding between founders. And you might be like, hey, why are you there? You're not really a founder. I did found this podcast, which I think is one thing that I never really credit myself for, and I know that I'm contributing into the industry. But I also tend to work with e-commerce businesses where the founders aren't actually going to things. And so the information that I have, is very valuable, and it's important to me to, make sure that I'm sharing my learnings. And I love working with founder-led businesses. There's a reason why, I'm not working for the iconic or, something big. It's just because it's not for me. And I like being with people who are, agile and who are very purpose-led, and not saying that a big business can't, but I think it's a very different situation. So I wanted to chat about, what I got out of this and kind of what I learned and what my takeaways were. So the first thing is it's called Humble Brags. And I think the really interesting thing is these founders are actually quite humble. The people who were making the most difference in the room, you would have never known. And I think that if we were all on the plane together, you would probably be able to tell who everybody is because they're on their laptop and on their phone, and there's almost this passionate energy that's flowing around this person. But they're so normal considering the fact that they are running, 7 and 8, possibly maybe some 9-figure businesses in there, and they've had incredible success in their lane. And it's so cool that these people are willing to take time out of their busy schedules and away from their families to come, focus on a little bit of restoration and relaxation, but also to really connect with other founders. I think there is this general vibe of we're all in this together, we're all in the trenches, even if you are technically a competitor, because that's something that's going to come up. And I mean, even if you think about my relationship to things, I have a podcast, Carmel and Hannah have a podcast, Jess and Anita have a podcast. that is part of my social circle. And none of us are competitors, even though we're all in the same industry, because we all offer something different and we're all supporting each other. I mean, they've also launched a supplement brand. You know, I am general manager for a supplement brand, but it's so different. And I think there's also that mentality of, I'm going to support my friends in anything that they do because I'm so proud of what they're doing and I'm so excited for them. And I think that definitely extended, you know, within this room. There were people where there were competing skincare companies, there were competing, you know, water bottle brands, I guess to an extent. There were very few times where someone probably didn't compete with somebody else, but I think the difference is the fact that each customer is different and each brand has a different value proposition. And the people that are there and showing up to obviously friendly compete, but they're showing up in their own lane. So it's really like made the best brand win in that situation. But they were all incredibly humble. The next thing that I picked up is that these founders know their business and they are passionate about it. So even if they're not hands on the tools, they are so conscious of what's happening in their business. They're conscious of like what is good and what is bad as well. I think that's one thing that there was nobody there who was like, yep, I've got it all together. And they could have been in business for the last 15 years and they're still humble enough to be like, oh, well, I'm really confident with this. I'm still learning this. I feel like these are my teething points. And that is actually so admirable. I'm so sorry if you can hear Zelda like chirping around in the background. That is actually something that I think is so admirable for people who, you know, effectively like have it all together, you know, have built these incredible empires or are continuing to build something that is huge. But you could feel, like, you literally could feel the passion in the room where somebody would be like, I have this logistics issue. And everybody would be like, dude, let me help you. And then someone would be like, oh, what's going on with Meta? What's going on with AI? What's going on with this? And there was never a point where someone wasn't like, hey, I'll help you. Even to where, you know, I have been, and I think this is like one thing that I'm very conscious of. I don't go as someone who consults in the industry, right? I'm literally going with like the mindset of the brand that I'm there for and to meet people and to connect with people. But I'm so happy to extend my time to be like, hey, you know, let me help you as someone who's been there because I'm happy to help you, friend to friend, as somebody who's also in the trenches. And I think that builds like a level of camaraderie that is just like so incredible. And it also like requires a lot of trust. Like, you know, people, there were a couple people there that I think were like fully opening up their P&Ls and being like, dude, let's chat through this. Like, how can we improve this? What's your perspective? And that I think builds community. And so to see, you know, Carmel and to see like my friends work together to support Carmel and building this community, I think is incredibly beautiful because everyone is there for the pure purpose of growing an industry and growing a community of people. And we talk about in ecom, like, oh, you need community, your brand needs community. That's the fucking way that you build community. Like you are showing up with a purpose that, yes, there is a level of profit in that purpose, but the people that are backing you are in it for the vibes. Like, you know, I talked about like the week before about quantifying vibes. Like that is how you quantify vibes. There is no way that there wasn't a return on investment for like every single person who showed up in that, in terms of like the time that they invested in it. There would not be a single moment where somebody didn't get something out of that event. It was just incredible. The next thing that I noticed about all those founders is that they never stop being agile. And work-life balance is like really tough, and I think that's really part of the reason that Carmel created the concept of the founder retreat in the way that it's set up, to where we have recovery, we have wellness. Like there were IV vitamin drips, which I was so good at that I missed because we know that I love a little IV drip. And I just missed it because I was working, which is like ironic. But every single person there is willing to be agile. There's not a single person who was set in their ways where they weren't willing to try or implement or discuss something that was different for them. And even in hearing like what some of the founders were doing in their individual business, it really showed me that like it doesn't matter what point you grow to, you never stop having your finger on the pulse. And that's an incredible part of growth. And I think that's where it helps keep you aligned with the business. This is where like I've always logged into Instagram, right? I go in and I check DMs. I respond to DMs. Why do I do this? because I want to know what's happening. I need to still have my finger on the pulse of anything that I do. And it would be silly for me to think that I could completely, fully step away. No, it's not within my remit. No, it's not actually my job description. But giving a fuck is actually the essence of my job description. And that is something that, it's incredibly important. The next thing is that nobody gatekeeps. So we had lots of conversations around, pricing, margin, distribution. Um, we even had a conversation about cash flow. And those are things that can be really tricky. And it was cool to be able to be mentored by people who have really like nailed a particular lane in their business, because I think that's one big thing is not no one in the room was the best at everything, and everybody was humble enough to acknowledge where their issues were. We had a mindset speaker come in the first day, May Somali, and I actually really loved that Carmel had her basically as like the first big thing, first cap off the rank, because I think it forced us to open up and have a level of vulnerability with each other. And, she has a beautiful business. So she has a business called the Human Leadership Lab, and she's worked with everything from like ecom to tech to like so many different business founders. And she was talking about kind of like the saboteurs that are in your life, and the way that you end up self-sabotaging yourself, and putting a group of 50 incredibly successful people in the room and saying there's something that you do that is fucking you up. Like, that's a big play. That's a really big play. But man, do I respect it. And did we all instantly really like let our guard down and get to know each other? One thing that she said that like really resonated with me is that great leaders don't react, they respond. And one thing that I have worked on, and one thing that I had, if I think about like earlier in my leadership career, I reacted to things, I didn't respond to things. And I have worked through dismantling some of my saboteurs, but we had to name our saboteur, and we really had to think about like, who is this person who's holding me back? Surprise, surprise, my saboteur is the people pleasing and the overthinking. That should surprise literally nobody that's listening to this. Because if you're here, you might know me in real life, or, you probably have started to pick up my vibe on things. Those are the things that I have. I'm not a control freak. I am not the productivity police. I am a little bit with myself. I'm the productivity police, but not with anybody else. My issue is that I people please and I overthink. It goes back to like the joke of like, oh, you'd like to show me where would you like and how would you like to do that? And like, I don't like that I am that person, but I know that's how I self-sabotage myself. And it's something that I'm very conscious of and trying to move away from. But Carmel having this set up in the first go meant that we actually needed to chat through as a group, like, who is our saboteur and how are we going to, one, name that saboteur. So mine has a name. I'm not going to say the name just in case anyone's listening. I don't want you to think that like it's about you, because it's actually not about you. It's about a fictional character who is a people pleaser. And we need to like acknowledge that like when we are making those decisions, we need to remove ourselves and stop. And like, that's not Chantel, it is the fictional character's name, which I will not disclose. And what I found really interesting, and this is probably where as a founder, I can step away from things, because this is probably where as someone who is not a founder, I can step away from things, is I am not a control freak. I'm not controlling with like any fiber of my being whatsoever. So I think like that is a big difference. And I will say, as someone who has worked with founders, that is often the thing that gets in the founder's way, because you are trying to control the narrative so hard that not only are you suffocating the success of the people around you, you're actually suffocating yourself, because you're investing your time in stuff that actually doesn't fucking matter and doesn't move the needle, and you're not focusing on what your secret sauce is. What I think, though, after meeting all these founders, is everybody kind of had the same thing of like people management being a problem and hiring being a problem. And it wasn't a reflection upon the people that are currently in their business, because they were very grateful for that. But I think they realized how rare it is to find great people. And considering the fact that I would say 60% of my DMs are people who are looking for work in the industry, I don't know if that's an indicator of everybody needs a little bit more support in hiring, or if that's an indicator of, wow, like y'all talk a big talk in terms of what you're going to do in a business, but you don't actually realize that you've got to step up and do the work. So I'm not sure which one it is. I'm going to sit and reflect on that. But as someone who, is actively helping support brands, I think that it's important for anyone listening who wants a career in marketing to figure out like there are founders who are going to teach you, and like in these founder-led businesses, you are going to learn more in these businesses than you're going to learn anywhere else. So not only do you get this amazing opportunity and benefit, but you're also going to get like a huge learning out of it. And if they are struggling to hire, it could be because they need to improve their processes, or it could be because you are maybe one of the people who talks a big talk and then comes in and does jack fuck all. So maybe don't be that person. I think like challenge both sides, get better at hiring, which I've actually got someone who's going to come onto the pod hopefully in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk about hiring and recruitment, but also like step up, contribute, and be a great employee. Like I always think about like Kim Kardashian's thing of like the sound that she has where it's like people, they just don't want to get off their ass and work. And it isn't that toxic concept, but I think it's the fact that I know that I've been successful because fuck, I've worked for it. And sometimes I worked too hard and it wasn't helpful, but for the most part, like I worked hard and I will continue to work hard because I know in order to achieve what I want, I'm not going to get there just by taking the easy path, and it's not going to happen. And then I think the last big takeaway about the founders retreat was that everybody is really there to accept where everyone else is in terms of whether they're introverted or extroverted, or they're asking for help, or they're just wanting to be there to mentor. It was such a great group of people where everyone felt really supported, and I genuinely feel like I've made new friends that I will continue to have in this industry, which I think is the reason why I'm so in love with what I do in the industry that's here, because we just are surrounded by the best people. If you are someone who's like thinking about, do I want to go to one of these things, I would apply, I would show up, I would go to more events, because majority of what I have learned, aside from like actually physically being there in my 9 to 5s, it's through the connections that I make, because it's the people with the finger on their pulse who are in the trenches, who are growing these businesses, that are able to add such invaluable, absolutely invaluable insights to me. So I guess that's just my pitch of like, I think absolutely everybody needs to go there. And also everyone needs to go to the Ardo Hotel. Like what a great weekend, guys. Can we do it again? Can we do it again with just like an extra 24 hours? Because I think that would just be I just always feel like you need just like that little bit more time, and it's also amazing what is able to be packed into basically like 48 hours. My brain is always blown by how much we do during that time. And I know I only post like us drinking at the pool, but the funny thing is that's probably like maybe 90 minutes, 2 hours of the entire thing. Well, I wasn't taken away by a cyclone. So that was the end of my camera battery, because we all knew this was going to happen. Have a great week, everybody. And I've only got like 1 or 2 more solo episodes, and then we've got a whole bunch of guests. So you'll be able to hear just me yap less. Have a great day.